Welcome to That Annuity Show, the podcast that will make you an expert in explaining annuities to your clients. Give us 30 minutes each week and we'll shave hours from your client presentations. Now, here's your host, Paul Tyler.
Hi, this is Paul Tyler, and welcome to another episode of That Annuity Show. Today, we are going to talk about advice and technology, how it's changing, where it is today, and what it may look like the next 4 or 5 years. Tisa, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Doing good.
Good. Well, this is a topic that's going to be near and dear to your heart, so I'm looking forward to questions you're going to pose to the group. Bruno, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Yeah, and great to have you on the show again. Ramsey, do you want to do the intros?
Be happy to. So, as always, very happy to be here live from Atlanta. We're joined today by two folks from Back Nine Insurance out of Southern California. We've got Reid Tattersall, who is the founder and VP of Back Nine, and we've got Josh Elohim, who is the head of sales. And I had the opportunity to meet both of them through various venues over the course of the last X number of years, and had a chance to, interact with their software. And as somebody who thinks quite strongly that software is going to be an important part of the future, should be an important part of the future of insurance, I thought it was a great opportunity to bring them on the show to chat about their approach. Because I think there's a lot of things about it that I think, will be relevant for our industry going forward. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to the two of you. Reid, why don't we start with you? Tell us a little bit about yourself and what made you decide to take this approach as somebody that came from a traditional background in this space.
Thanks for having me. So got my start, like most agents, with a captive company. Started with Mass Mutual. I think I was in college at the time. Don't know what I was thinking. Just wanted to work or do something productive. And then I worked for another wholesaler when I was in college as well. And I was all about that education early on. Before kids, had a lot of time on my hands. So I did the whole CLU, CFP, CHFC, kind of went on. And started to grow Back Nine, and kind of started at the bottom in terms of the case management, the marketing, the sales, went on. And took a while to realize that to have a larger business, to scale it, it's difficult if you do that just based off of relationships. If your competitive advantage is my relationship with you, you can have a great career, great business, but to grow your team is difficult because the power in that relationship is between that salesperson and that agent. So hence the switch to the technology. Hey, how do you create something that's a bit more lasting, a bit more sticky? And kind of just dove into that and found a passion for it, and haven't quite picked our heads up since. So it's been, I say I still feel like a startup, but it's been a long time in startup world. I mean, it's been maybe 9 years of building software, of iterating to get here.
Fantastic. Josh, tell us about yourself. So I'll just say that Josh is somebody you'll see spreading this gospel through webinars, at conferences. You are out and about, and I'll say you do it very well. Tell us about your story.
I really appreciate it. I won't go too far back, but opposite of Reid, I've kind of had kids first, and then started working second, if that makes sense. But I've been doing sales since I was born. I joke around and say that, but sales is just kind of in my blood, and I just love talking to people and communicating. But I've been with Back Nine now it's been almost 13 years now. I came in with no experience, so it's a little bit different. No retail experience, right to the wholesale side. It's always nice talking to someone when they have 30 years of experience and you're explaining to them why they should work with you, right? So ideally, I've learned so much in this business. It's an absolutely phenomenal business. We always say it's kind of like this, just very, 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 very slow. It's not like this, but just very slow and steady. So life insurance, you change people's lives, and it's truly been a great time. I've had the chance to talk to some amazing people and really help to change people's lives. So I'm really excited for the opportunity here.
Yeah, maybe talk to us about a little bit about the problem you're attacking. Reid, you kind of mentioned it. You said it's hard to grow a business just on personal relationships. You know, what's the problem you're solving for agents at your firm?
It's a big industry, as you know, and so many different ways to sell. So we're trying to solve it's like the Steve Jobs thing where how did he compete with free, right? In the era of free music, free movies, just download it for free. What did he do? He made it easy. So easy that you decided to actually pay. So that's kind of been high level of how do we just make this easy? How do we create a marketplace so I can go to Expedia.com as opposed to, one airline. I can see all the options. My contracting's all handled. I can view the case from start to finish, and I can service it as well.
Well, what are some of the things that, as you talk to agents, what are the things that, one, come up as the biggest friction points, right, that you're resolving, and then two, that agents are most surprised that you fixed?
I think agents are most surprised that it's all just there, and they don't know how easy it is. Right, Ramsey, we were talking, hey, if you have a WordPress website, you can grab your snippet of code, put it online, and you're in business. So, agents are constantly emailing, hey, I want to get set up because it's going to take time, or am I all set up? What are the next steps? And usually the next step is go sell a policy. You're already set up. From there, though, it's not easy to be an agent. Right? It takes a lot to be successful in that business. So that's when I say, the hard part is on them to build relationships, to go make it happen. We can make it easy in terms of put everything there for you. Carriers obviously do their part of the whole operations from putting products out and paying commissions. But ultimately, the whole thing relies on agents making it happen with customers.
To add on to that, too, if you don't mind, I think to figure out a solution, like you said, Paul, what's the problem? And the problem that I've seen in this industry is that I joke around, but agents used to do life insurance illustrations with a rock and a chisel, right? So people are used to 40, 50, 60-page paper applications. And so Reid's vision, he'll be bashful here, but his vision was he's a surfer. And he said, how can I be out? I want to be out surfing while collecting applications at the same time. How is that physically possible? So that's kind of part of the reason that Quote and Apply came to fruition. So the goal is when you show people who appreciate our software the most are the agents who've been doing this for 20, 30, 40 years. They're the ones that are like, this is the best thing since sliced bread. Millennials will say, isn't this the way it's always been? And then we have to bring them back to reality that, oh, you have no idea how painful this process used to be. So really identifying the problem allows us to get to the solution. And that's what we've kind of done here is really just identify the challenges. And the second part to that is keeping a lot of agents have been in the dark. They don't know what's going on with their business once they do submit an application. That's the whole second part of the equation. And that's where we created a whole software to track everything from submission to commission. So that visibility has been priceless for us to help agents out, bring them to the 21st century.
I have a question. Sounds like you've been on this technology journey well ahead of the pandemic, but I'm just curious, during the time of the pandemic, when we hit that time frame and we went to quarantine and we really had to change how we worked right overnight, do you feel like your platform was well positioned and poised for that change? Were there any surprises where you had to quickly pivot, do something different with your technology to meet agents, change in how they were doing business?
Yeah. That year, I think our application count went up probably at least 60%. So from a business standpoint, we were, somewhat prepared, right? It fell into our business model. But there were some bumps along the way. right? Carriers change a lot of rules in terms of e-delivery and new forms and such. It's awkward to say that, COVID was good for your business, but, in a sense of having a technology business, a platform where insurance agents now have an easier way to sell insurance online or over the phone when in a time when you can't see people. I'm happy that, we were able to do that.
Did you have any new offerings come out, like post on the other side, or?
I can speak on this if you don't mind, Rita. For us, I think it was absolutely amazing. Well, first of all, we went to Zoom, we went to technology software, so being able to communicate. Where before, I would go, I've been in this business for a while, I would throw the suit on and I would go drive to the agent's office. Did any of you remember that when that used to happen? So that was a very interesting time. Now I can talk to 20 people in a day and I can see them and I can hear them. But the thing is, we had integrations that we were trying to get access to. So the front door has been closed for us for a long time, but the back door with integrations, and I had an integration come through that was one of my biggest ever. So for me, it was absolutely a game changer for us to have. The pandemic helped us out tremendously, in my opinion.
So what has the state of readiness been with sort of the suite of carriers with whom you're contracted? Because sometimes the front end, right? The front end is ready, but then at a certain point it hits, a set of back end processes, and sort of across all the carriers you deal with. I mean, how many of them are sort of ready to interact with you at the speed with which you're able to bring in product and business?
That's one of the hardest things of having kind of a marketplace is how do you standardize, the user experience when each carrier, has a different interpretation of the same law of how products can be sold. So there's a lot of unique logic that goes on per carrier, unfortunately. And these carriers, they're the mountains. And ultimately, we're not signing up for the fight of going to try to move a carrier. We'll give a little prod, a suggestion here or there, but it's really up to them. That being said, we'll kind of wait for the carrier to say that they're ready on certain initiatives like direct, integrations to get applications done instantly. A lot of carriers are excited, but I think their sales teams are well ahead of where the departments are. And then a lot of these insurance companies are dealing with software that was built a long, long time ago. So they have, so they say some technical debt, and it's not that they're not working. It's just, they're working with some more difficult tools. So we kind of, on a, maybe even a daily basis are looking up and saying, hey, what's going to make the best impact? How do I improve our business 10% this week? And those decisions constantly change. It's hard to know that 6 months, a year in advance. I mean, we have general visions on where to go, but things are moving fast. And I think if you have a team, you just start. You start building, you start, adding value, you start making your users happy, and you iterate. It's that lean startup mentality for insurance. So you have so many companies out there. Each one has a different writer or feature or underwriting thing and it's insurance, right? There's so many niches in insurance, from pet insurance to life to all these different lines to MIGA, as Paul we were talking about. So, our thing is kind of just shots and goal and continuing to try to improve the product, make users happy. That's the North Star.
Maybe we could talk just a minute about the other end, the agent operating system. I would say, our Thiessen and I spend a lot of time with some of our agents, talking through their digital marketing needs. They'll have a website, may not be very good. Sometimes it does look good, but they just don't have a lot of traffic here. For somebody to really take advantage of this technology, what type of journey do you have to take them on? Like, how long does it take to go, Josh, from I'm used to driving out with a suit and tie to I actually can comfortably build up my email network and traffic onto the website where I'm actually getting business.
No, absolutely. Well, I think failing is what helps us to win, right? And sometimes the only way to really appreciate something is to not have it or to fail at it. And that's where we've seen, our job, like I always said, we have the most fun job on the planet, because when you've already gone through the failure and you see all the challenges, like I've seen everything that can go wrong, right? Everything. And then you have an 85-year-old who gets on the call with you and he says, I can't believe how easy this is. You're like, well, our job is, it's actually working, right? And so ideally, you're just showing them a process that's normally done very painfully in the past, and then you show them how easy it is now, and they're like, wow, this is, where have you been my whole life? Many people have called me and said, I'm going to come out of retirement here because I used to do this before all the time, and now you're here now. So my favorite quote that I heard was, this brings the life back to life insurance, just so you know. That was my favorite.
So, but what kinds of things, what kind of agent profiles do you see that are for whom this works? I mean, say you have, I don't know, you have however many folks in your pool, like what kind of habits, personality traits, et cetera? Like, what do you think? How is the agent in this paradigm different than the one that was successful in the old sort of smile and dial paradigm? Is it the same person? Is it a very different person?
We've definitely seen a change in our business. The agent that we know from when I first started was the traditional life insurance agent. That's all they sold was life insurance. Now, we call them dinosaurs now, but that was their bread and butter. They used to carry a book around, right? A thick book, and no one had access to that book. So that was their go-to. And that life insurance agent, what we've seen is that now life insurance is not just sold by a life insurance agent. The change now is we're seeing P&C agents come in and sell life insurance. We're seeing employee benefit agents come and sell life insurance. We're seeing financial planners starting to cross-sell life insurance. So I think sometimes it's out of fear, sometimes it's out of greed, sometimes it's out of, there's several different reasons why. But if anyone has a book of business, that's the best opportunity for them to start cross-selling life insurance, because what we say is that it completes the life insurance circle, because it's a very sticky client. And what it does is it helps, because people don't get rid of their life insurance. They might change it, but they don't normally get rid of it. So it really makes a very sticky client, and it helps to secure that book of business.
And
Ramsey,
you mentioned sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Bruno.
No, but you mentioned that the 50 pages that are already always there that everyone struggle with. How do you see, and how can you use technology to make it more efficient, and most importantly, shape the right message? Because I think we all know that sometimes the red tape behind it kind of puts us all on different tangents that are not necessarily relevant for the core and the real focus of any insurance product that you're selling. So how can you use technology to bring the conversation at the right place and focus accordingly?
I think that it's a great question, Bruno, and I think that freedom is what people really want these days, right? They want to be free, and they want to be able to have what they want to have. I always joke around, I say, you want to be free like Braveheart. But does everyone see this thing right here? I know the viewers can't see this, but I have my cell phone up here right now. We're all hunters, not like we used to hunt, but our hunting now is done through the cell phone. So people hunt through their cell phone every single day. So ideally, we need to be able to have the new features of hunting. So this is building this for the millennials, building this for people who are so used to having what they want when they want, without having to, I'm sure you've all seen things where you go to get life insurance, and then they say, give me your email and your phone number. Most people just leave that site. So it's about giving people information and giving it to them quickly. And when you give people what they want, this strange thing happens. They take it and they run with it.
I think people think of life insurance online, and a lot of times they just associate with like direct marketing or spin a website up, and all of a sudden people are going to purchase, life insurance or products from them. And that's been especially difficult the last couple of years. You talked earlier about, money going into a bunch of companies that are, no longer in business or not doing so well. It was a red ocean to buy leads. So if you were, doing SEO or buying leads 10 years ago, very different than the last 5 years. And as some of these people stop spending so much, that wave may come back where it's a bit more affordable. Companies, it's not okay to lose a ton of money. So the type of agent using this is, technology can be used by the traditional agent. I want a simpler process to quote. I want it at my fingertips. I want to take applications, whether it's on my phone or the customer does it. Or, we have this other sort of embedded insurance type of marketing. And we've sped that process up dramatically, right? It's, if you have trust with your users. The initial thought with this was, hey, we're going to go to Bank of America and E-Trade and Scottrade and Schwab and all these companies that are licensed for products, but aren't doing them. What do they have? They have the trust with the customer. So those sorts of organizations, if you have trust with your audience, you can probably do embedded insurance because your brand customers know you. If you don't, and you're for the first time buying Facebook ads, you're going to have a much, much harder time. You're probably going to fail. So unfortunately, if you're a brand new agent thinking that I can just stick this on the website, there's probably a bit of a reality check for 9 out of 10 of them.
Interesting. So we have an event actually in New York on the 27th. Ramsey's leading one panel. The topic is future of innovation and retirement. We actually have a VC panel. And one of the questions is, where is the money going? Where should the money be going? If you kind of take your experience, look, a lot of people have done some great work. Some, as you indicate, some have struggled. I think some have clearly found and solved a problem. I think others, jury's out. If you were advising somebody on a $100 million VC portfolio in this space, where would you put the money?
You pick your bank carefully first.
Pick your bank.
Crypto life insurance. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
So we're talking, hey, do you become a carrier? Do you become a distributor? Do you become a fee-based service?
Yeah, if you kind of looked across the services you're building, the services you're using, you said, you know what, if we had a better XYZ, this industry would be a lot better. It'd be easier for us to grow our business. It would be easier for agents to sort of plug into this marketplace. Would it be, on the lead gen side? Would it be, the technology that may have a broader, impact on our business? Zoom, I'm going to tell you, is probably one of the best insurtech disruptors of our time. Now, they probably don't see it that way. We do.
Well, maybe another way to think about it is, so we've got a business process here, right? There's a value chain, and you've solved a clear portion of it, right? And then there are other parts of the value chain that probably introduce some constraints in your business. As successful as your business has been, there's probably other things you wish other people would fix. So maybe what are the things that you would want to see fixed else, outside of your direct purview, but that you think would ultimately be helpful to growing your business further?
It's great to see carriers hiring their own talent for engineering and building their own tools. In that situation, they control their destiny. If they use a third party, what usually happens is, well, let's get a bid from that third party. Let's get approval for these hours, and things just don't happen. So, I can't say you could just jump in with VC dollars and own an arm of an insurance company, but if you could allocate that money towards, hey, you spend a couple million, $5 million per carrier, and you divvy it out to 20 carriers, and their job is to build APIs for distribution for anyone that needs it. right? And now we have this ecosystem, almost like this open source community where we can see everything that's available. Years ago, before we were live, it was in trying to tell that story to carriers of creating an API sales strategy. One of the most important things from a company is being able to provide your quote. What is your price? You can't provide. Are you serious? You can't provide your price? And a lot of companies are still there today where we don't want our price to get out because we don't want to be spreadsheeted. So yeah, I'd say companies build internal tools, put them out there with public documentation, show the world what you have. And I think it might take some time, but people are going to adopt that.
No, I love that answer. I do think like open banking should come to insurance, open insurance. Now, it's interesting. I've talked to people who are involved in the NAIC, and they say, well, what can we do? I'll tell them, you got a lot of power there. You dictate that carriers must file a PDF application for you to approve. Why don't you require an API at the same time? Now, I get just blank stares. So I don't know, Ramsey, Bruno, Tisa, I don't know. What are your thoughts here? Should we, when we go to market with products, should every carrier be required to also file the API with the regulator state by state?
I think sort of philosophically, I think as an industry and even coming from being an investment banker, we were wired the same way. We tend to focus a lot on the technology of like the product itself, the widget, but the real sort of opportunity is to focus on the experience. And so the question is, all right, well, what form of product lends itself to being delivered through electronic media, like sort of for the whole, again, from point to point, right? So yes, I whether it's submitting an API or whatever it happens to be, like, but literally in the process of developing a product, also being very clear on sort of the electronic journey it's going to take along the way, I think is important.
When you compare that to a company that has to deal with hardware or inventory, I keep on thinking it should be so much easier, right? We're selling intangible products. These things are unlimited.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Paul. I mean, I think about the power of enforcing or standardizing something, right, through the submission and approval process. And I think technology or the API sort of unlocks and gets everyone's mind shifted to, we're going to enable this every time and all carriers will offer it. But I almost take it back a level to like the very, very basics of like a common form or a standardized, like everyone needs name, everyone needs SSN, like, because if it was standard, then enabling technology on top of it would be much easier. You're not necessarily having to retool and rebuild for each carrier. Each agent, agents across several carriers would have a common experience. Clients across several purchases could have a common experience. And I know it's a kind of huge thing to tackle. I've heard it talked about a little bit, but standardizing or creating sort of that common form, and they've done it for scholarships. Why can't we do it for insurance? So.
Yeah, Bruno, I actually think Canada is farther along this curve than the U.S. I mean, I've seen, now there are fewer carriers in Canada who have much more market clout, but I know that there were some sort of standardized efforts to do things as, Ramsey, as boring as checking licensing centrally. Bruno, have you spent much time looking at the Canadian solution to this?
It's like everything else. The big institutions, government tackle problems one way or the other. So I wouldn't, I wouldn't say, one way's better, the other way's better. But I think there's a common denominator where everything takes so much time. Simple things, just like Tisa, just like you mentioned, those very simple things take a long, long time. So, for better or for worse, but I wouldn't say one country's significantly ahead of the game or the other. I mean, those issues I think are recurring everywhere.
Yeah, Josh. Go ahead.
I was going to say I I get the challenge. See, the challenge for carriers is they have to protect themselves, right? So life insurance has always been sold through an agent, right? That's kind of like been their security of protection. Well, nowadays, now we have, I can't speak for anyone else, but our software is individually. It can be done by the client. So now all of a sudden you have a new level of security that scares the carriers for their protection, right? But we know that consumers are driving everything right now, and they want to be able to do stuff themselves. So part of what was really important to us is the agent-facing / consumer-facing. And that opened the door to 5 or 6 other industries that we never had a chance to be in before. Hence the employee benefits, the property casualty. We had no opportunity to be in that space. But because of the consumer facing, hey, throw this widget up on your email signature and you could be selling life insurance like that. Oh, you have 10,000 clients? Okay, well, how about cross-selling every single one of them life insurance without you lifting one finger? It sounds pretty nice, right? Now it is happening now, maybe 10% of it's by the consumer, 100%, but it just gets the ball rolling here. So that to me is some of the challenges of the carrier, but they have to overcome that challenge because consumers now are really running the show. They don't have to go to anyone anymore. So that's probably the biggest difference that I've seen.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. Fear blocks lots of change. Everybody's in favor of change until it changes them. We all are kind of wired that way. I was on the flip side. If we had, TC, jump in here if you disagree. If we had our IT team on here, they'd say, we're not scared, Paul and Tisa. We got a lot of projects on our plate, big, huge things. We got this big, giant mainframe that was built. You heard this stuff. Okay, make us the business case. So, Reid and Josh, I'd really be interested. So you're how you would go and pitch this this allocation to all these carriers. What's the ROI here? Is it selling more per agent of what they're selling today? Is it that, finally you can start to see cross-sell, we'll get cross-sales we've all been talking about for years and years, but it hasn't happened. It will happen now. What's the business case?
Yeah, I think for a lot of companies, I would say it's simply renting versus owning, or term insurance versus some form of permanent insurance. Are you going to invest in your own engineering team, or are you going to continue to use third parties? And, at best, you're going to be kind of average if you can stick with, outsourced stuff. If you want to differentiate yourself, if you want to improve your underwriting, right, which every insurance company wants to do, if you want to improve that user experience, if you outsource, you're probably going to be just like the next person who outsourced as well, probably to the same company. So it's a chance, right? Every business is a technology business. It's a chance to lead, to be forefront, and the investments that they make today are going to pay off long term.
Okay, Josh, what's your pitch for $10 million to go into this stuff? Because whatever it costs, you think it's cost, multiply it times 10 when you get to a large organization.
Well, we do this pitch almost every day because companies are wanting to know why they should partner with us, right? How is this going to work out? How is this going to benefit us? And we won't mention names, but Reid knows the company we're talking to right now about this. So, for me, in order to change your circumstances, you have to change the circle you're standing in, right? So what we had to do, I'll speak on us for a second, we had to step out of our comfort zone. And how many wholesalers or GAs or IMOs, whatever you want to call them, how many of those do you know who have 3 full-time programming people? So Reid is actually practicing what he's preaching right now on the call. We had to step out of our comfort zone. And 7 or 8 years ago, we really had to say, hey, we have to do something different here, because what I realize is all these wholesalers are all the same. They're really just, they've been given their kind of order takers. So we really had to step out of our comfort zone to be able to do something different. And that's where the programmers came into play. And now we, like you said, you were impressed. You said we have an open API. We have all the stuff that we've built here. but I call it walking on water because we don't charge anybody any kind of money, right? I'm still working, reading that part of the equation, charging for this, but I don't think we'll ever get there. Go ahead. We were going to say something, Ramsey?
No, you and I have had some conversations, so I was just revisiting those conversations in my mind. Well, look, I have to say this is all fascinating. I mean, I'm particularly sort of intrigued by this notion that development should be done in-house versus outside. That's like a real tension right now in the industry, right? And there are legacy systems, mainframes, a lot of COBOL, right? And we're in a world where, in general, the new world is obviously cloud-based solutions. So, that's an interesting takeaway for me from this discussion.
Yeah, I mean,
have to say.
Definitely make things cloud-based, but I think some people outsource and they feel like the problem's off their desk.
Yeah.
And sometimes they hire, they say the 10x engineer. Well, they're hiring 0.1x engineers and they have 100 of them. So, a small team can do a whole lot. And I know that they got legacy stuff, but work late. I've told people that work at insurance companies to get it done, and some of them I feel like just that's not their MO, right? That they're not that startup mentality where they're going to shake the trees and push stuff. They're looking for their boss and their boss's boss to have 3 meetings before they get the okay, and they procrastinate and things don't get done.
So Tisa, you've been in the fore. You pushed this argument a number of times. What would you add to what they've said? I mean, what are the arguments that convince people to do things differently inside carriers?
Inside carriers, I was going to kind of say the industry, their market's really driven by what consumers are going to start looking for and demanding, right? We can talk about how agents may or may not be looking to change how they do business, but if they don't, like the consumer or the client's going to show up that is looking to buy differently. I think that drives some of the change. But inside the carrier, I mean, maybe it's a lot of the same conversation. A lot of times when I'm sitting there explaining what we're working on, I take it out of the industry and I just talk about our everyday life, whether it's how you're, ordering food home to the kid because you're at a meeting and they're at home texting you saying they're hungry, or your own buying experience for travel, or your own buying or investing experience, online, the do-it-yourself investor. Like, I feel like if we think about our own lives and how we are in the consumer's seat often and think about the technology and experiences that we're demanding, why wouldn't the consumer in our industry be demanding the same? And so I feel like when you bring it down to that level and think about your life and your everyday, it starts to paint the picture of the ROI. I'll just give one more comment, which is being in a position of sort of supporting aging parents. It comes to the forefront really quick. You're sitting here thinking about how are you going to, help your parents make their decisions, and you're a lot of times taking the control there. It may not be my parent that's looking for the modern buying experience, but me being in the caregiver situation, how I'm going to do the research and how I'm going to help them make the decision is very much looking for a more modern, technology-driven, on my own time type of experience. So I think that helps justify why we need to shift how we do business.
Well put.
Believe it or not, in 2023, today, people are still scared of going through a life insurance process. Could you believe that or not? Like, they're still dreading going through an application. They still think that, it's paper. They still think that. And so really, we just have to change that mindset. And it just unfortunately, it has to be one person at a time. And that's how you change it, is saying, hey, there's a different way. I can't tell you how many times we go through an application and the person at the end says, that was it? I've been dreading this whole entire time. I've been scared of this process, and we're done. Obviously, it helps with Zoom or Teams when you pass the screen, right? The joke that I say is we just finished a 60 or 70 page paper application, and you don't even know if I have pants on.
Yeah.
It always gets a good laughter. So I try to keep it light and have some fun here.
Yeah.
I know you don't hear fun and life insurance in the same sentence, but you got to keep it fun these days,
Hey, that's great. Well, hey, Ramsey, we're right at the end of time. Do you want to take us home here?
Sure. Just a couple things. First of all, any parting comments from Josh or Reid? Do we miss anything?
I want to hear what Tisa did, right? That was a real life situation. Did you have was the information there for you to make a decision? Why didn't you make a decision, or why did you?
I'll give you kind of a two-part response. So, of course, no, everything I needed wasn't there, and there were gaps, right? Because our industry is behind, and I got frustrated with the process. But maybe going off of what both Reid and Josh you said, I think that there's an avoidance of process, but I think more so it's an avoidance of the emotional. Like, I don't think really people acknowledge the emotional impact of that I'll say specifically life insurance sale, because nobody really wants to think through what it feels like to not be here, or what it feels like for there to be a gap in your family, whether it's financially, emotionally supportive. And I think that's the avoidance factor. Luckily, I have, parents that were kind of willing to have the uncomfortable and sit down and say, like, here's what we need to do if I'm not here. Here's what's in place if I'm not here. But that's a really hard emotional place to be in. I think people avoid that more than anything. And then comes the process. So for me, there were some gaps in how it got done. I happen to be bi-coastal, so parents in Seattle and I'm in Hartford, Connecticut. So if my agent wasn't willing to get on Zoom and go through this with me, I wasn't flying home to have the conversation. So building that relationship on Zoom was very real for me. And going through the process, even though it was paper and printing it out and scanning it and signing it back in DocuSign, we got it done. But there were a lot of pain points along the way. I persevered because I know the importance of it. Probably because I've grown up in the industry, but that's not common for every family. So I hope I'm answering your question, but there's definitely room for improvement, but there were some bright spots along the way.
That's a great point, and I'll end with maybe taking Paul's $100 million and tying it in. I think one of the best Super Bowl commercials was about the dog and the dog food, right? And they appealed not to the ethos, which is the logical side, which is most of the marketing we see, but to the, I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but to the pathos, to the emotional side. And I'd love to see some companies master the emotional side of life insurance in a classy way that gets people like Tisa convinced and sold. Because when you get a customer that's already mentally convinced, they make decisions fast and they implement.
Excellent.
All right. Well, thanks everybody, and we're just over the hour. It was a great conversation, and appreciate having the two of you on.
Yeah, thanks. And listen, I'd love to have you back at some point. And for all the listeners, join us again next week for another episode of That Annuity Show. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Appreciate
guys.
it.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend us on iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information at thatannuityshow.com.